Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. You're in for a rant today. We're talking about elbow government. Good old elbow. Eyeing off, squeezing us punters, us mugs for more money. Then we're going to talk about what this 5% home deposit scheme will probably do to the housing market. We'll jump in.
There are growing signs the Albanese government is considering a suite of new wealth taxes. Instead of curbing their record levels of spending, the government is engaging in classic wealth redistribution.
Yeah, from me and you and Shazzy here. Good old Shaz. I don't mind Shaz. She says it how it is. From us to politicians. That's the wealth distribution. They're going to talk about the welfare state. The public service is the welfare state because we're paying for them. And they're sitting there thinking about ways to get more money from us.
Under Labor, the nation is moving from a country of aspirational hard workers to one of entitled welfare recipients who are told they deserve constant handouts in every facet of life.
The public service.
The government is entrenching now an ever-expanding welfare class. This is impossible to fund for perpetuity. And it's retirees and middle-income taxpayers who will foot the bill.
Shazzy, it's not impossible because they'll just keep importing more people to tax and they'll keep taxing us punters with new levies, hidden taxes on all sorts of stuff. Don't you worry about that, Shazza. They're already thinking about it.
One of the first taxes could be on the spare bedroom in your home.
Get stuffed.
There's also a new road user charge for electric vehicles. And there are calls for retirees to be taxed even more heavily. Here was Treasurer Jim Chalmers pressed on this on Insiders yesterday.
I'm sure he's going to give us a straight answer, as always. Good old Jim the Spin Master Chalmers. Everyone's been gone after. That's what's been all the rage. I've been ranting about this for the last couple of weeks, every day. You got some new article or some economist or think tank or something coming out thinking about the Grattan Institute, number one offenders of this, coming up with ways to basically turn the country into a full-blown communist country. We need the hammer and sickle on the flag.
Today.
Does that mean some tax breaks for retirees will have to go?
Well, first of all, we need to ensure collectively as Australians that the fair go is the defining part of our future and not just the defining part of our past. But ultimately, decisions on any additional tax reforms will be a matter for the Cabinet and for subsequent budgets.
So answered nothing.
So that's basically confirmation that the government will be considering new taxes through the Cabinet and the usual processes.
Yeah, and they sat down for 3 days. Oh, it's a productivity summit. Well, they're pretty productive, weren't they? They're productive of thinking about ways for me and you to pay more money to them. You voted the mob in, and guess what? They'll get in again. So you get enough punishing here. Oh, but now the approval rating's the highest it's been. I don't know. I need to go off planet, I think. We're living in clown world here.
Although the Treasurer did rule out cutting back tax-free superannuation income in the retirement phase. Now, you heard there he spoke about a fair go. Well, raising taxes for retirees who've carefully planned for their retirement is not exactly a fair go.
It's a fair go for the politicians because they get their pay rises every year. They have job security. They don't need to meet any KPIs. They're just there, dead wood. It's not, perform or get out or come close to your targets or get out. It's you don't have any and, we pay for them. That's one thing I have about taxing the elderly. There are a lot of people out there saying, we've got all this money and they're sitting on it and they're 80 years old. They should be taxed on that. Why should they be taxed on that? They've worked their whole life to amass that money. Now, if that gets given to their children or grandchildren or they give it off to charity or whatever it may be, that's their business. It isn't for the state and for these progressives to come in and say, nah, the divide's too big now. We need to take their money and redistribute it. get stuffed. Going after the elderly who've worked their whole life, paid tax, mind you, their whole entire life. Now you get them to the end, thinking that they're going to enjoy their twilight years, and they get hit with more taxes and then extra stuff on their super and all this kind of garbage. Get stuffed. I don't know who supports this stuff. It's people who support this stuff are people that are just angry at life and don't want other people to have things because they might not be feeling in a place of optimism at the moment. They want other people taxed into the ground.
And then over on ABC Radio, Chalmers was asked whether he's planning any changes to family trusts or to capital gains tax.
Yeah, ask him.
Is the treatment of family trusts in your sights or perhaps a reduction of capital gains discounts? Can you change the system without any of those measures on the agenda that genuinely address the unfairness in the tax system?
We haven't changed our specific policies on those areas that you identify, but what we have agreed with the Economic Reform Roundtable is that any further steps that we take down the tax reform path, which would be a matter for Cabinet, would be consistent with those three principles that I mentioned.
Now, none of this will increase GDP per capita, which is the ultimate economic measure of well-being.
That's it. I need to be on here. I need to be the chief economist and have an opinion on Sky News. I know people hate Sky News and they say it's, far right and all this sort of stuff. Any sort of media you see is going to push its own agenda. But how can you not see truth in what these people are saying? I know I watch Sky News because they say it how it is at the moment. That's it. That's why I've been doing some videos talking about these particular broadcasts. Straight up. If you can dismiss it and say it's right-wing propaganda, you got rocks in your head. Yeah, progressive roundtable. Let's get a roundtable. We're going to do it for the people, guys. We're going to try and, that's the whole point, to raise GDP, get the economy going again. No, they sat there for 3 days and came up with what? The bedroom tax. Get stuffed on that. The bedroom tax. Who comes up with this? So they want people to be forced out of their homes because they have a spare room, because they don't have someone else living or renting on it. Why does it fall onto, once again, the people to solve the government's problems? It's like shoehorning in a solution that is a detriment to everybody who pays and keeps this country going. Biggest load of BS there is. And they're going to do that. There's going to be something like that. If you hear whispers of it, you can tell you that they're tabling that.
And as you know, for most of the Albanese government, Australia has been in a per capita recession. The Australian's editorial put it well on the weekend when it said that redistributing the spoils is no substitute for growing the pie. Here's the Oz leader. It said, policy designed to pillage the capital and savings of older Australians to balance unsustainable government spending will always be a road to nowhere. Government must get its own budget affairs in order and seek a mandate from electors for any changes to the tax mix that it wants to make. And the Australian also asks, how deep will the Albanese government's obvious attraction to what Tom Djusevic describes as state paternalism and a cradle-to-grave care economy be allowed to run? Well, wealth redistribution is a classic Labor technique, and it's one that Chalmers referred to when he spoke of the intergenerational lens on Thursday.
So why should the government get involved in the people's affairs? Once again, I just touched on this earlier. Why, if your family has been good with their money over the generations, why is it now up to the government to start taxing people over a certain net worth or inheritance taxes? This is easy. This is low pickings for them because they know that people are angry. A lot of people are out there struggling because of the Labor government, because of the things they're doing to push up the cost of everything, or your utilities. I thought they're all supposed to go down. Everything they're doing, all the taxation they're bringing in, that drives the prices up, that drives up inflation. More taxes means businesses are going to charge you more. Nah, you got to tax the big guys. No, you're still paying their tax. They're gonna pass it through to you, levies and all this sort of stuff. Good old Jimmy.
I think our tax system is imperfect, and one of its most troubling imperfections is best seen through an intergenerational lens. And what I mean by that, and really almost everybody around the table had a similar view, which is we take our responsibilities to the coming generations seriously.
It's not just higher taxes, it's high immigration, which is leading to extreme measures on the housing front. Over the weekend, the New South Wales government announced there'd be a new heavy rail station in Woollahra in Sydney's east. 10,000 homes will be built around it. 10,000. Now, federal...
So what does that do? That soaks up about 2 months of immigrants? 3 months of immigrants? Awesome. Well done.
Minister Tanya Plibersek backed this in on Sunrise this morning.
You know, you have to make sure that every part of our capital cities is actually contributing to those housing targets. There's no free pass for some, particular suburbs like Woollahra.
Well, I'm glad that Tanya's supporting 21-storey apartments in the inner west. I'm sure her constituents will be happy to hear about the new shade they're about to get.
Barnaby, have you seen Green Square?
Make it happen.
There's high-rise all over the place.
Okay.
I can't walk down the street without tripping over a high-rise.
Well, you're going to get more of them.
We've got plenty of Meriton, we've got plenty of Mirvac, I can tell you, all over Green Square.
Put you down for 21 Green Square. I mean, but Joyce's overall point in that interview was right. 20-storey high-rise buildings.
That's the norm, and that's what's coming. And I've been talking about this for months. Ranting, carrying on. That's the future because we have a swelling population. We're not getting any more land, and people will say, well, go and live in the middle of the Kalgoorlie desert. Well, or the desert out there somewhere. Go live on Uluru. You can't live there. There's nothing there. It's dirt. They say, we've got the biggest land mass and we only have 28 million people. And how does this happen? Because it's all around the coast. That's where the country is. And that's how it's going to stay. And all they're going to do is build it up. So you're going to have 20-storey apartment blocks, 10-storey apartment blocks lining the streets in like another 25 years. So Melbourne's population, I'll speak from a Melbourne perspective because I live in Melbourne. Melbourne's population is currently 5.2 million. The projection in 25 years was over 9 million or 10 million. So they're doubling it in that short of a time. Taking 250 years to get here. Let's double it in 25 years. Joins basket case. But the thing is, these people aren't affected by it. Albo and whoever these politicians are that make these decisions, they're living in their nice areas where the majority of migrants aren't going to be able to afford to live, and they'll probably be heritage listed and won't have all these high rises built up. All the outer suburbs and middle suburbs, they'll be like slums with infrastructure that's going to buckle because of all the cars. So, as I said, not looking good for the future. I'm going to leave this podcast, this episode. Let's move to the next one. So, guys, halfway through, if you're enjoying the content, consider subbing to the channel. Trying to get to 10k subs in the short term. Almost there, so help me out. Press a few buttons, a subscribe button, a like button, and maybe make a comment. Also, if you want to support the channel further, I've actually just set up our Patreon. The link's in the video description if you want to chuck a couple of bucks my way. But no pressure. I appreciate all you people who watch me on YouTube for free. All right, let's jump on to the next one. So I want to talk about this. This is adding fuel to the housing market, adding fuel to the fire. And this is Labor's 5% deposit scheme. So what's a 5% deposit scheme? That's where eligible home buyers, first home buyers, are able to secure a property with only 5% of a deposit of the property. And they won't have to pay LMI. I'll talk about some of the pitfalls of this as we go along.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese now, he says this will make it easier for Australians to get a foot onto the property ladder, but there are significant concerns this is actually going to do the opposite, pushing up house prices further out of reach. Now, The shadow spokesman, Shadow Minister for Housing, Senator Andrew Bragg, has been deeply critical of the government's efforts to tackle housing and this latest announcement, even prompting a sly backhander from the Prime Minister today.
Now, maybe the member can have a word with Senator Bragg, ring him up this afternoon and say, mate, I think you've got this wrong. I think you should back in the government on our policies. And while they're at it, they can back in our entire Homes for Australia plan.
Senator Bragg joins us now. What did you make of that?
Good afternoon. Good
Like all these guys do is just talk absolute shit and argue with each other and get paid pretty considerable amounts of money to do so.
evening, Steve. Well, the government's hopeless on housing. They have presided over a massive collapse in housing construction whilst basically putting Australians through the largest increase in population in our history. So they've been an absolute disaster on housing, and we're all paying the price.
Well, every time I raise this issue of housing with people who don't follow politics particularly closely, often the response is just that, Andrew. Well, why are we letting so many people into the country if we haven't got anywhere for them to live?
No, that's racist. You can't say that. You're a white supremacist if you say something like that. So let's talk about what's driving up property at the moment. So we have a lot of migration happening, and it isn't just people from third world countries who have no money. A lot of the migrants coming in, they're skilled professionals. They can make considerable money. They bring over with them significant wealth, and they can purchase property. They can get in and buy properties that first home buyers might want to buy. They might buy out further out in suburbs or enclaves, or where their background, heritage, where they all congregate and live. But that's one house someone here isn't going to be able to buy. Then there's rent. So over the road from me last night, I thought it was quite incredible. So I'm saying this firsthand. So I live in Melbourne on the south side. I've seen nothing like it. They had a unit in one of those old school 80s sort of block of units, the red brick ones where there's like 8 of them on a block and a large triple block type thing with a driveway that goes right down the back. And it had been renovated, and for a 2-bedroom unit, it looked nice. So $620 a week. But not talking so much about the price. There are probably about 50 young couples lined up out the front. I was like, what's going on out here? I thought there was an auction or something. 50 people waiting to get up. 50 couples, sorry, about 100 people, and the line increasing, and to go in there and walk through this place, and maybe one of them might get it. So we have a lack of rental stock. We have a lack of properties suitable for even younger generations to get into. I think if the more expensive ones, there's a little bit more stock out there for people who can afford a house for $2 million. This is what's going to happen here. So you give them a 5% deposit scheme. That's what they go and do. They go and run down to the local mortgage broker, max out as much as they possibly can, and spike their own debt. So they take an extra 15% of that property price on as debt. So that's mortgage repayments they have to pay if they can service it, just to get into a house. It makes it worse. It makes the quality of life for people worse. It makes the stranglehold of debt for people worse. But they think the government's doing them a favour by allowing them to get into a property with less money. 5% deposit, and then what, you got to pay another 5%. They don't tell you that, but another 5.5% in Victoria for stamp duty plus all the other costs. So you'd have about 15% probably of the price, maybe 12% of the price to get in, instead of 25% of the price, without paying lender's mortgage insurance. So guys, what do you think's going to happen here? Everyone's running down, everyone's maxing out, everyone's panicking, because things aren't looking great. People will do whatever they've got to do to get in. It pushes up entry-level properties up. With a rising tide, right, all the boats rise. And what happens? People either buy these properties to live in, or they might rent vest. But because they've maxed out their their debt, and their earnings are probably not even going to come in close to really covering it by the rental income that would have been traditionally on that property. They have to raise it. Once again, a rising tide, all the boats go up. People doing this. So it's going to be a big problem. That's my opinion on it.
Well, in fact, when we asked questions at Senate Estimates about whether the Treasury Department had modelled the impact of having over 1 million people come into the country but only building a couple of 100,000 houses at the same time, they said that they hadn't been asked to do any modelling. And in fact, Katie Gallagher said it was good that they hadn't modelled that nexus. So there you go.
So, I mean, I go back to, when I was trying to buy my first house and I never had enough, I spent too much money having a good time probably, so I never had enough money for a deposit, but my partner at the time did. We managed to scramble it together and get a loan from the bank.
Oh, you gold digger, Pricey. Eh? You're out there hitting the piss out, getting smashed. Down the MCC, where I could see him down, the local golf club, getting absolutely tanked. You got some young honey with a bit of money, and that's how he got his first house. You ladder climber, Pricey. You absolute cad, you.
What worries me about this is this 5% idea that you can go out and now you can earn whatever money you want. You can go out and apply for a 5% loan, and the Australian taxpayers are going to guarantee that loan to that bank. Is that how it's going to work?
Well, it's absolute insanity. So the Commonwealth Government will become the biggest mortgage insurer in the country, and the Commonwealth will be underwriting all the mortgages because it won't be means tested. And so you can see that very wealthy people, the children of billionaires perhaps, will become subjects of the scheme. And I mean, welfare is for people who really need it, Steve. It's not for people who have a lot of money. And when the scheme was initially introduced, it was about lower income people. And now expanding it to all Australians potentially who want to buy a first house without any means testing or income caps, I think is just a crazy idea that the nation can't afford.
And there's not even a cap any longer on the number of these loans that will be able to be accessed, is there?
There's no cap on that. So my sense is that the cost of this new scheme will be in the tens of billions of dollars in terms of the contingent liability. And I just think when you're looking at 10 years of budget deficits, this is another example of spending and costs, even if it's contingent liabilities, that the nation can't afford. So
because there will be people say, oh, that won't happen. But there will be people, a percentage of people who are going to need to be covered, right? The government's going to have to bail them out or pay the shortfall to the bank or whatever. They're a guarantor, right? So there will be people who become delinquent because maybe they've overborrowed, they lose a job, they get sick, whatever it may be. These things happen in life. So who pays for that? We do. But I think it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. So what's going to happen is they're going to keep pushing up the prices of housing for the next generations. So what will be next? You got your 5% deposits backed by the government. Then you've got 40-year or 50-year mortgages. They're going to have to do that so that they become the serviceability. Actually, the numbers stack up so people can actually borrow the money, because whether you got 5% or 20%, with 5%, you've got to earn more money because you have to be able to service a bigger mortgage. So it's a cash flow thing. And so what they're going to have to do, they're going to have to stretch out the tenure of these debts to 40 and 50 years so that these monthly payments can be serviceable. So people in debt for their whole entire adult life. There you go. That's the future. I'm going to leave it there. I've had enough ranting on this one, guys. If you want to watch the originals, the links are in the video description. Once again, if you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon, or consider becoming also a channel member. Cheers.